About 20 years ago, I was 18, attending a class in college when the lecturer called out for Uma Devi. She had exchanged colleges, so instead of this girl, a tall, fair boy with heavy-lidded eyes stood up. And I saw my husband for the first time. Gaurav and I became best friends. We dated for 10 years. We got married. And after 5 years of being married, we're ready to start a family. But for some reason, we felt like we had to rush this and make this baby happen now. So unlike other couples, we started our journey with IVF, the fertility treatment. In 2015, we had our first cycle, got embryos implanted, and I had 2 potential babies inside me. We were very excited about this new possibility in our life. Gaurav loved kids. He was going to be a great father. We talked about what we'll name our kid, what he or she is going to grow up to be, and what are we going to do if we have twins. We were so sure we'll have twins. Everything was going great, and there was a week left for the pregnancy results to come out when Gaurav had to travel for work. He left and told me he'd be back in a couple of days, but the same night, a call came. His car had met with an accident. He was on his way to his hometown when a truck hit his car from behind. And they told me he was critical. As I rushed to get to his side, the entire 8 hours I had to drive to get to him, I was praying with all my being for him to pull through. I mean, he was just 32. We had a future plan. We had things to do, places to go, babies to raise. On August 11th, 2015, Gaurav, my best friend, took his last breath. And I wasn't able to say goodbye. And as that reality came crashing down on me, all I could think of was why? Why him? Why me? Why us? And in the trauma and grief that followed, my body rejected the embryos. And I felt cheated. I felt like my only chance to hold on to a piece of him was lost. But there was one more avenue open. The hospital had saved a sample of his sperm as a part of the IVF treatment. Science was going to help me make my miracle. I was faced with a choice. Should I do as my friends and family told me? Forget about it, move on, it's a bad idea. Or should I do what my heart desired and go after this dream that we had together? Have any of you ever done something that made no rational sense, but every fiber of your being was compelling you to do it? That's what was going on with me. Over the next 2 years, I underwent multiple IVF cycles. I subjected my body to an assault of hormones and invasive treatments over and over again, hoping to bring our child into this world. I lost my gallbladder, I lost my job, I lost all my savings, and I still wasn't able to get pregnant. The doctors did every possible test on me, but they couldn't find anything wrong. So I was just one of those random, unexplained cases. And then there were 2 embryos left, my last chance to have this baby. And I was faced with a choice again. Should I use these embryos in another attempt with my womb, or should I opt for surrogacy that has a better chance of conception than somebody dealing with infertility? With all the abuse that my body had experienced and still not delivered any result, I chose surrogacy. Another woman's body would nurture my baby in her womb for 9 months. On August 11th, 2018, exactly 3 years after Gaurav left this earth, Sapna, our surrogate mother, handed me the biggest joy of my life, my baby boy, Aditya. And just 2 weeks after Aditya was born, the bill banning commercial surrogacy was passed by the Lok Sabha, supposedly to prevent exploitation of poor women. But one of these women had given me a purpose to live on. I mean, if it was not for surrogacy, if it was not for Sapna, I would not have Aditya today. A choice that's not going to be available anymore. Because the Surrogacy Regulation Bill of 2016 that was passed in 2018 says that you cannot pay to have a surrogate baby anymore. And if you're single like me, or if you're in a live-in relationship or in a same-sex relationship, then forget about surrogacy entirely. That's promoting a very heterosexual traditional idea of a family. This in a country where prostitution is technically legal. Indian laws do not regard sex in exchange of money as prostitution. According to the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act of 1956, prostitution is defined as a sexual exploitation or abuse of persons for commercial gains. So it's not the act, but the exploitation that's illegal. In fact, a Supreme Court panel set up in 2011 recommended that police must not interfere with or take criminal action against adult sex workers participating with consent. The panel said, and I quote, "Whenever there's a raid on a brothel, since voluntary sex work is not illegal and only running a brothel is unlawful, the sex workers must not be harassed, penalized, criminalized, or victimized." That's confusing, isn't it? If paying for sex is okay, then paying to gestate a baby should be just fine. Let's forget about the outrage that women are once again being told what we can or cannot do with our bodies. Let's not even consider the moral dilemma of surrogacy, but on the basis of exploitation alone. Let's think about if we've thought this through, or is this just another case of systemic hypocrisy? In a billion-strong population, 14% of Indians are infertile, yet only 25,000 surrogate babies are born every year. And this was before fertility tourism was banned. So essentially only about 20,000 women opt to become surrogates. Compare that to the 3 million prostitutes India has today. And the average age of girls entering prostitution is 9 to 12 years. That's children being violated. In contrast, a surrogate must be an adult and must have a child of her own before she can opt to become a surrogate. A woman can be a surrogate only once or twice, maybe thrice, whereas a prostitute submits to countless people over her lifetime. And what do they get out of it? A low-end prostitute? 130 rupees a day. That's barely enough to live on. Whereas a surrogate makes 1,500 rupees a day, plus food, medical expenses, and housing. And let's not forget that for some, prostitution is demeaning and surrogacy is not. So what is the rationale of this ban? Or is there a rationale at all? Bans happen because of moral outrage, and that's not a redeeming basis for decision making. Even if we forget about the right or wrong of banning surrogacy, do we really think it's going to solve the problem of exploitation? Because that's the main issue, isn't it? Preventing exploitation. Actually, a ban it mentality has worse repercussions. Historically, random bans have done 3 things. They've led to blatant flouting of the law, they've created black markets, or they've forced people to choose unsafe alternatives. Take brothels, for example. Brothels in India are illegal, yet they're thriving in the red light districts of Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, running on illegal trafficking of girls. On GB Road alone, there are 90 brothels housing 5,000 women and 800 children. And what's being done for this blatant flouting of the law? Nothing. Drugs are banned, yet $40 billion global trade happens every year. Abortions are banned in many countries, yet 25 million unsafe abortions kill 22,800 women every year. And abortion rates in countries where they're banned versus where they're broadly legal are ideally the same, 3.4 to 3.7% respectively. So a ban isn't really doing anything. People will do what they need to do. People will use their bodies, if necessary, to deal with situations life presents to them. Banning something just denies legal recourse to the very people that you're trying to protect. And now if something goes wrong, they'll be scared to come and ask for help. Instead of banning things, instead of looking at exploitation as a problem, we need to look at it from a dual lens. One of hurt and oppression, and one of choice and identity. And I propose that instead of banning things outright, we put laws and procedures in place that promote choice and deter exploitation. Because if it were not for a proper contract in place, Sapna would not have been able to earn the money that went a long way in securing the future of her child. And that's why she chose to become a surrogate. If you ask a woman to choose between surrogacy and prostitution, what do you think she's going to choose? Now drop that thought and let her choose. Because the essence of being is choice. Our choices make us who we are. It was my choice to continue down that IVF path that made me a mother today. It was my choice to go down a path that was uncharted, uncertain, unconventional, that brought me here today. It was my choice to do the unthinkable that birthed my son, my book, and my new journey that holds a piece of Gaurav wherever I go. Everybody is entitled to their choice in the journey that's their life. Don't take away choice, empower it.